welcome back to Charlottesville Insights. This is Jeff Gaffney, your host, and with us on the program today, our special guest, Pat Jensen. Pat is the Vice President of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate 3. She is also the former CAR President, which CAR stands for Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. She's also the former President of the Virginia Association of Realtors. Pat, you're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Well, you're awesome, and thanks for being on the show. We have two main topics we're going to cover on the show today. In the first part of the show, we're going to talk about the making of a realtor.
Okay.
And the second half of the show, as we get to it, we're going to review some of the numbers from the 2015 CAR year-end market report. You've looked at those numbers. I've looked at those numbers. The numbers are really good. And again, the great news for 2016 is that the market is off to an incredibly busy start. There's a lot of activity. But Pat, thanks again for being on the show.
I always love being here.
I want to talk about the making of a realtor. That's the first part. And I want to kind of go into two different avenues on a realtor because we get a lot of actually direct messages on Twitter. We get comments on our Facebook fan page. We get emails and phone calls for people that are thinking about going into the real estate business. And as you and I know, Real Estate 3 is expanding our sales team. So I want to talk about the making of a realtor. And there's nobody better, I think, to talk about this topic with than our own Pat Jensen, who joins us in the studio today. I want to take it in two different directions. There's several different facets of being a realtor, but I want to focus first on being a really good listing agent. And for our audience who needs an explanation, a listing agent is typically the realtor who represents the seller in a transaction, helping the seller sell their home. Pat Jensen, thinking about a really good listing agent, which you are and have been highly successful in your career, what comes top of mind to you in being a great listing agent and representing sellers in today's real estate market?
Communication. That might sound silly. You have to be able to go in and help the seller come up with a price that is reasonable and competitive in our market. We'll get into the competitive part when we talk about the report. You have to be able to have some marketing skills or be with a company like Better Homes and Gardens, which provides us with virtual tours, aerial flyovers, all kind of things that will make the house shine and sparkle when you put it out into the public, which is primarily through the internet these days as opposed to photographs in magazines. But most important, to be a good listing agent, you have to have good communication skills with your seller. I have had many cases where a seller would say, I never hear from my realtor. I don't know what's happening. You should be able to be in touch with them regularly in the way in which they need to be communicated with. But you just need to have a plan and a system to make it work.
Yes. And as you touched on, real estate is a relationship business, and the relationship as listing agent, you have a fiduciary relationship to the seller. We usually preach that there's three goals as the listing agent to the seller. It's to sell their home for the highest price in the shortest amount of time with no legal entanglements. 1, 2, 3. Highest price, shortest amount of time, and no legal entanglements. And if you're able to do that and as you know, there's a lot of highs and lows in a real estate transaction because there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but if you're able to stay the course, you can get through to a successful real estate transaction. What else comes to mind?
I think that a very important component for both being a listing agent and a buyer's agent, and I don't know very many people that are one or the other, I'm about 50-50, is managing expectations. When we go through the negotiation process, the seller and the buyer need to understand that there's going to be negotiation. Your first offer is probably going to be ridiculously low, but you need to keep plowing through it. The home inspection list might be just something you want to scream about, but again, you go through the process. They need to know the steps that are coming up ahead of them. They need to know the roadblocks that are ahead, the problems that can come up with appraisals, with lenders, with qualifications, with meeting all the deadlines that are required to be met on either side. Because sometimes what happens is everybody gets angry and they start blaming the buyer, the seller, the listing agent, the selling agent, when in fact, if everybody just takes a deep breath, manage those expectations, know that it isn't over until it's over, then that is a sign of a good realtor, to manage the expectations, to keep everybody calm.
Well, I can see why you're such a great realtor, Pat, because I do think that you have that incredible skill, and it's kind of a DNA or a genetic thing about you that you're able to help people take the emotion out of a real estate transaction. Because let's say you're representing me and you're my listing agent. We have a house listed, I'm just going to pick a number, $400,000, and the first offer comes in incredibly low. Let's call it $325,000. We see that happen all the time, where the buyers today still think they can get a deal, even though we're going to talk about in the
That's
car
right.
report that it's really a seller's market.
Yes.
But the seller, on receiving the quote-unquote lowball offer, oftentimes feels insulted. And if you have the wrong personality who's coaching you as the seller, you're kind of a real estate coach in this role, because you have to keep, I think it's important to keep that deal alive. And oftentimes you'll see that 320 come way up, as long as you don't get too emotional.
I just tell people that there's too many people, buyers particularly, that are watching television and they're hearing things like, oh, make an offer way lower. You can get it for a steal. And in our area, the list price to sold price ratio is pretty darn tight and getting tighter. So we don't have those big deals. But I sit down with the seller and I say, look, these people are going to come in. They might come from another part of the country where they do have these wide margins. They might watch too much television. And all we have to do, if their agent doesn't show them, I will print out comps to show them what houses in that neighborhood usually sell for in relation to that. And we will continue the negotiation. We try not to be offended, and we try not to walk away.
This is Charlottesville Insights, and we're talking with Pat Jensen, the Vice President of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate 3, and our topic is the making of a realtor. And Pat, one of the things, I just want to clarify one thing I just said. There are times when we may advise a seller to reject an offer. It's not often that happens, but I just want to clarify that, because I said earlier that the lowball offer, oftentimes we want to keep that offer alive. There is a time to break out and reject an offer. If it's so ridiculous, we might advise our clients to reject an offer. But I just wanted to clarify that. Now let's flip it over and let's talk about, now you're representing the buyer. What do you think, Pat Jensen, is most important being a realtor in representing a buyer today?
Very similar to the seller. Manage expectations. Let them know, especially if they're from out of the area, that if they qualify for a $300,000 house, it doesn't make sense for us to look at a $330,000, $340,000, $350,000 house, because we don't see those kinds of drops. And so it's making sure that they see enough property to see the value for what they get for their money in this area, number one. Making sure they're aware of the neighborhood price values that they are buying into. Making sure that they're aware of things like, we look for mold, we look at construction, we look for cracks in the foundation. All these things are taken care of in the home inspection. But it's an education process that we have to go through. So it is keeping them informed, making sure they've got all the websites and sources that they know to look up things, to be the source of the resource, and just manage their what they're going through.
Let me mention something else on that, and then Pat, we're heading towards a break here in just a second. One of the things that you do so well, and again, I do understand why you were not only the Virginia Association of Realtors president, but you were also Realtor of the Year, Salesperson of the Year, and so I understand that because I've seen you in action. And one of the things that you do really well is that you educate each buyer based on the condition of the market that they are considering buying in. Let me give you an example. If you had clients that are looking in the $2 million price range, well, in that particular price range, it may be a buyer's market in that price range. And so you might be able to take your time, see all the different choices in the marketplace, and then make your decision based on that. But let me give you the other example. This week I had the opportunity to preview Gracie Haynes' open house in Mill Creek South.
The only house in Mill Creek on the market right now.
$309,000. I went to a Realtor open house. There was an absolute traffic jam of realtors lined up to preview her home.
Approximately 20.
In Mill Creek South. So when I was there, I had to stand in line to get in, and the point is, if you had a buyer in that market, you would educate them that if you see something that you really, really like, you're probably not going to have the luxury of waiting. You're going to have to go ahead and get yourself pre-approved, get all your ducks in a row so that when you see that home come on, that you can strike.
Absolutely. It's so important to be pre-qualified before you even start looking at houses. You need to know what you can buy and what offer can be written up on your behalf.
And I'm so proud of Gracie. She was in there just directing traffic, and I would expect that home is probably going under contract any day now.
Any day.
This is Charlottesville Insights. We're talking with Pat Jensen. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to shift to the CAR 2015 year-end market report. We're going to look at what those numbers say. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Please stay with us. And welcome back to Charlottesville Insights. This is Jeff Gaffney, your host, and with us on the program today, we have Pat Jensen. Pat is the Vice President of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate 3. She's the former VAR President, also the VAR, again, which stands for Virginia Association of Realtors. The entire state, she was Realtor of the Year, Salesperson of the Year, one of the most decorated realtors in Central Virginia and in the state. And now we're going to shift to and talk about the CAR year-end market report. Pat, I want to read a couple numbers to you and then get your take on it. It looks like 2015 was a really good year for housing. Here's what the first line in this report says. It says, home sales in Greater Charlottesville have now increased for 4 consecutive years, and over 3,200 homes sold in 2015, marking the highest level since 2006. Can you believe that we're saying the year 2006?
Well, that is correct, and we had 300 more sales in our area than we did last year. So that represents a 10.6 gain. But 2006, if you remember, is before things started going downhill.
Yes, it was an amazing year.
That's
in
right.
2006, and it's phenomenal to me to think that we're talking about 2006 type numbers again. Let's talk about the pricing remains steady. They said the median sales price is $270,000 for the year, which is unchanged. But it's 10% higher than the bottom. That's great news that finally pricing it looks like it's really recovered.
Yes and no. The fact that it is remaining steady during these years of increased sales is telling us that what we went through in the peak of our market, which was so unrealistic, to the downturn in our market, we still have sellers that say, I'm waiting till the prices come back. This kind of information is showing us the prices are not coming back like they were at that unrealistic point, 2007 to 2009.
Yes.
What they are doing is leveling out, and so our median sale price is the same in 2015 as it was 2014. So that is telling our sellers, yes, we are needing properties on the market, but you still cannot be unrealistic about the price that you put on it. The good news is the prices are not going down. They're slowly going back up the way they should be, at a rate of about 3% of a year instead of 13 and 14% that we had in 8 and 9. But our inventory is 16% lower than what it has been. So that is what is driving our market and turning this thing into an opportunity for sellers to get their houses on the market right now, because there are buyers looking. And so you can count on a steady price, not an outrageous one.
What do you attribute the 16% decline in inventory to? Is there anything that kind of comes top of mind? Do you think people just took their homes off the market for the winter to give it a breather, and that we'll see more homes come back on? Or
I think
is it the sales pace?
I think there's still people thinking that they're going to wait and get a higher price. I'm not sure that price is going to go that much higher. I think that new construction starts have not been as high as they had been in the past, and that is not keeping pace with the demand that is happening. The interest rates went back down again, and so interest rates should be getting the buyers out there, which they are, but the buyers can't find what they want. You know, our days on market has been reduced to like 40 days on market on the average, and yet half of the inventory lingers. That half of the inventory is overpriced for the condition of the house. So if you put it on at the right price, you can get a pretty quick sale.
That's good advice by Pat Jensen, who's the Vice President of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate 3, joining us on the program today. Pat, one of the things that we talked about on this show earlier in the year is new construction, and it's this fact that before the crash, so 2000 up until 2000, from let's call it the mid 80s to 2006, 2007, half of our new home sales were speculative homes.
That's right.
And today, when you talk to, we might hear about a builder building what you and I call a spec home or a speculative home. We might hear a builder talking about a spec home, but you just don't see any spec homes in the market. I think a lot of that has to do with financial risk in terms of the lenders don't want to lend any money.
It's the lenders. They do not want to take that chance. And so most builders don't start a home until they have a contract for it. And then the buyer picks out the details of the house. So I only know of one, maybe two builders right now, I think just one, that will put out a spec home or two, but they don't put many.
Right.
They don't have more than one or two at any one time. They just can't step out there and take that chance. The money's not there to finance them.
And I think the builders are willing, the desire is there.
Absolutely.
The ability is just not there because they can't borrow money like they used to.
And I think the buyers are there. But the culprit in the middle is the lenders.
Is the Dodd-Frank regulation, which we talked about on this program. Talk a little bit more about this car report. One of the other things that we saw, it was a huge year, 2015, a huge year for attached home sales. Attached home sales, which again will be duplexes, townhomes, or condominiums. They were 15% increase over 2014. And I said on the show last week with Tom Wolfolk, one of my predictions of 2016, which we want to get into your predictions, Pat Jensen, one of my predictions is that you're going to see an increase again in attached home sales, partially because That's what the builders have to build under 300,000 in the greater Charlottesville market. It's attached. It's townhomes. You can drive further out, a couple of counties out, and get a single-family home in that price range, but you really can't get in the greater Charlottesville, kind of the suburban Charlottesville area, can't get a detached home for under 300. That's just the way it is. And so there are buyers out there in that price range, and what they have to buy are attached homes, which are fine. You and I are big fans of townhomes and condominiums. But the other thing that's happened in the last 2 years, there's been an incredible release of financing, available financing, particularly for condominiums. At the very low point of the market, we'll call it 2009, in that range, the end of 2008, 9, 2010.
There was no money for condos.
Couldn't finance. If somebody wanted to buy a condo, you'd say, well, great, yeah, I hope you have cash. Now you can go in, it's not 5% down like it was, but you can go in and get 10% down and buy a very nice condo, or a lot of the townhomes, depending on where they're located. You can buy a townhome today with 5% down, and in some cases less than that.
Well, that's right. That's our first-time home buyers.
Yes.
It is a much-needed and in-demand price range. And I think that the key is this condo financing. I think the statistics, when they talked attached, didn't include as much condos because the condo market has been very slow. And it's just in the last few months that this money is becoming available. And I think we are going to start seeing more condos being sold, and therefore the prices of those will inch up a little bit, but still be well within the affordable range for first-time home buyers.
And Pat, I will tell you, my phone right now is ringing off the hook with young buyers who want to buy a condominium in the greater Charlottesville area that are looking for a condo, which again, they couldn't do
right.
2 or 3 years ago. Now they can because the financing is available, and people feel better about the condo market as a result of that.
That's right. That's right.
Pat Jensen, it is always great to have you on this show. We're heading towards the end of the program, but what do you think, one of the things that I have a concern in our marketplace is the fact that rents continue to go up, up, and up. Now that's good for our investor clients, which you and I deal with a lot of investor clients who are buying up properties and leasing them out. And the high rents, great for them. But what do you think, just in general, do you think that the rental prices are going to hold? Or here's the question I want to ask: do you think we're at all in a rental bubble?
I think that there's still a large percentage of the millennials and Generation X that are not convinced that home ownership is what they should do. There's been a lot of push from the government. And so I think there is going to remain a large rental market, especially in this area where we have transient people coming here less than 3 years.
Yes.
They're thinking it's better to rent. I'm not sure that the rental rates are going to go much higher because of the incredible amount of new construction
Yes.
in the rental community.
Yes.
But I think the rental market's going to remain strong.
That's what you heard from Pat Jensen, Vice President of Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate 3. Pat, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. We'll have to get you back and talk a little bit more as the 2016 real estate market really starts to heat up. And I tell you what, things are incredibly busy right now, even with the snow and the rain. Again, this is Charlottesville Insights. Make sure you check out realestate3.com. We'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Awesome.
I had a question there that I was going to give you, and then Joe was giving me the fingers.
Right.